Hello, and welcome to the Township of Ocean Historical Museum's Remembering Bob Landis. Here is our president, Paul Edelson.
On November 13th, the museum lost a dear friend, Robert Landis, at 95. I've known Bob Landis for over 40 years. We first met when he was a customer of mine at EAI, and later when he and Lois became involved in the Historical Society, and later the Township of Ocean Historical Museum. Bob had many talents. He could sketch, draw, as evidenced by the museum's logos, our stationery, and many drawings in the museum. He was an accomplished carpenter, having restored the front door of the Woolly House, built the museum quilt rack, which is a piece of art. For 8 years, Bob took care of the lawn and gardens at the museum. They haven't looked as good as when he retired 3 years ago. He was the museum treasurer for 10 years and took us from a checkbook to a full accounting system. Bob never appeared at a meeting without a coat and a tie. He was very dapper. We are so happy that Bob sat for an interview of our hometown histories in 2015. So sit back and relax and enjoy Bob Landis in his own words.
Hello, I'm Dallas Grove. Welcome to this edition of Hometown History, a project of the Ocean Township Historical Museum, preserving the past for the future. Today, we'll be talking to the museum's own Bob Landis, who in his 90 years has lived through the Depression and World War II and has managed to be a manager practically from his first job right up to the present.
Yes.
Welcome, Bob.
Thank you very much.
It's good of you to share your story with us. It's really very compelling. Let's start with the beginning. Tell us where you were born.
I was born at home in Asbury Park on the second floor of a house that was located at 4th Avenue in Langford, right on the corner. That was in 1925.
And it was the custom at that time to be born at home because?
Yes, there were no hospitals in Asbury Park or anywhere near Asbury Park. As I mentioned, in Spring Lake, there was a home down there that a few doctors were using as a hospital, but it was not well organized, or wasn't recognized.
And hard for a woman in labor to get to Spring Lake maybe in time.
No, we just called the doctor and he came to the house.
And the doctor came to the house.
That's right.
So that house is still there.
Yes, it is.
Your father had a job as a window decorator, designer.
That's correct.
And that's how he supported the family.
Yes. And he was offered another job in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. And we moved there, I think it was 1923, he moved the family to Harrisburg. And I had my elementary education there in Harrisburg. And then we lost my father in 1939. And now my mother was alone with 4 children to take care of. And she decided to go back to Asbury Park because she knew the people there, and my paternal grandfather lived in Asbury Park. So we took temporary living at my grandfather's house. But my mother then she got a job, and she found an apartment on Cookman Avenue in Asbury Park, 3rd floor. And it was a great place to live, really.
What kind of work was she able to get?
She worked for, she met my father in Asbury Park while she worked in a photo and camera shop.
Oh,
That's where they met.
oh.
So she had some experience working with people, and so she got a job actually for a dentist at that time.
Mm-hmm.
And that would be like 1940. And she managed to move the family.
A family of four, keep them all together.
Yep.
Quite a woman for her day, wasn't she? Holding down jobs and having a family. And
Yes, and some people suggested to her that you can apply for welfare.
is that right?
And she said, never.
Is that right? Huh?
Yeah, she's very, very proud woman.
Mm-hmm.
Now, my brother, he's 17, he's older than me. This is 1940. We're back at Asbury Park. He's 17, I'm 15, and I have a sister, 13, and one that was 7. So we're 4 children. We're in this apartment with my mother. And, of course, she couldn't make very much money as a assistant to a dentist. So my brother got a job. He's 17, so he got a job as an usher at the Savoy Theater in Asbury Park. And I think he was making 25 cents an hour, which was a good rate at that time.
Was he still in school?
Oh, yes.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, he worked night times.
Mm-hmm.
So he was able to contribute some towards expenses, home expenses.
Yeah.
So I thought to myself, well, I'm 15, but you got to be 16 to work in a theater after night. So I lied about my age, and that came to light when I was old enough for Social Security.
Oh.
That came to light, and I had to admit that I lied,
Uh-huh.
and they had to readjust the Social Security records.
Without penalty, I hope.
Oh yeah, no problem.
Yeah. Now, you worked at the Savoy Theater, which is
Yes.
one of the Walter Reed original theaters
That's
in
right.
Asbury Park.
Yes,
Both you and your brother then.
yes.
Mm-hmm.
I worked with my brother. Now, a year later, he's 18, and he was out of school, and he attended a school for Army, U.S. Army.
The war had begun.
Oh, the war began in 1941.
Right.
Yeah. So this is the war period. 1942. He was in officers training at that point.
Mm-hmm.
He was fortunate he could get that. Meanwhile, I'm still working at the Savoy Theater as an usher. As some of us might remember, that in those days the theaters were ornate, and they were big, 600, 700 people seating, and there was a stage with curtains.
Yeah.
And when the show started, the curtains would open and the film would flash on the screen. So now ushers were required at that time. And I was working in nights. So there were dressing rooms in the backstage, and there we changed from street clothes to uniforms. We were uniform.
Very snappy looking, huh?
Yes.
So you were a man in uniform even then?
Yeah, even that.
Yes.
Yeah. So, that was, you had to have a white, they provided the white collar
Mm-hmm.
and a bow tie, black bow tie. You had this nice uniform on, and you had to wear black shoes, and there were requirements. And then you reported to the manager when you were ready. He would assign you either to the balcony or the orchestra. And there was a chief usher, and he handled things for the manager. Well, that manager was drafted, and I've been working now up there for about 2 years. So at that time, I had become the chief usher. When the manager was drafted, then Walter Reed, who had all 6 theaters in Asbury Park, he had a regional manager that oversaw the 6 managers. So he came to me one day and said, Bob, you're going to have to take over as manager. And I said, okay. And I got a raise. And
To 50 cents?
no, 35 cents.
35,
Yeah.
okay.
And I did that for after school. In fact, I arranged to leave school at 12:30 every day in my senior year. I arranged that, my mother did, with the principal at Asbury Park High School, because I had to open the theater for the matinees during the week. And I was responsible for hiring and maintaining the usher staff. And I did all the other managerial duties, which included taking the money to the vault.
Oh, boy, yeah.
Well, Walter Reed had a individual, his name was Sam, and he drove a truck that belonged to the theaters. Now, Sam was armed. He was licensed to carry an arm, so he's the one who would take me to the bank every night and make the bank deposit in the vault there.
A lot of responsibility for a 17-year-old. Were you 17 at this time?
I'm still 17.
Yeah.
Yes. And then I wasn't the only one doing this now. A classmate of mine, same situation at the St. James Theater. He was the chief usher. The manager was drafted. He had become the manager. So here you got young boys managing these theaters.
Was that your friend?
No.
No, and someone else?
Yeah, that was somebody else, yeah.
Okay, so you had a friend, though, a very close person who...
Bill Couse.
Bill Couse, who keeps recurring in your life at different points and stages.
Yes.
Uh-huh.
So, and then one day the regional manager came to me and he said, "Well, we lost the manager in the Paramount. I'm going to move you down there."
The Paramount Theater, right on the boardwalk. That's like the premier theater.
Yes.
And the only one left of the Walter Reed theaters in the city now?
Yes, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And that was a much larger theater.
Oh, yeah.
And it was quite an experience for me. And Bill Couse, my friend, he worked with me during that period when we worked in the theaters. So that's takes care of that.
Well, that's an institution now. The Paramount's on the National Register of Historic Places.
Oh, yeah,
and so you were there pretty
yes,
pretty early on.
Yep. And well, Bill Couse and I, he was my good friend in school, and we did a lot of fishing. We liked to fish, and we bought a canoe together. And we would fish Saturdays and Sunday mornings when we're not working. And I kept a canoe backstage in the Paramount Theater because it was close to the Deal Lake. And one day we took that canoe out and we said, you know, the ocean's very calm today. Why don't we give it a try? Take it out in the ocean. So we did. That was 1942. So we go out, paddle out some distance, right by the convention hall, and this shrill whistle came from the top of the convention hall. And there's a Coast Guardsman up there. And he said, "No boat traffic, go ashore." Well, that was disappointing, but the Coast Guard was very active at that time. Spying for submarines.
Looking for submarines,
not German submarines, because those submarines tried to put people ashore, you know.
Little did you know, right. But that may have been the start of your naval experience,
Yes.
the canoe in the ocean.
I also want to mention 1943.
Yes.
Well, I'm still a senior now. I'm in high school.
Keeping up your grades, I gather.
Oh, yeah, I did.
Yeah.
I didn't have any trouble with that. In 1943, though, the New York Yankees had spring training at Asbury Park High School because travel was restricted during the war. And they couldn't go to their usual summer in Florida. They couldn't go to Florida. So they came and they practiced at the Asbury Park High School baseball field. New York Yankees.
That's really great. That must have been a defining thing for Asbury Park.
Yeah, it certainly was.
I read a little about that, and I saw that the commissioner of baseball's name was Landis.
Oh, Judge Landis.
Uh-huh.
Judge Mountain Saw Kennesaw Landis.
Right, yeah.
Yes.
Any connection whatsoever?
No, no known connection. No.
No known connection.
No.
Oh, we'll have to dig and find one for you.
Yeah.
So that 1943 was that was a big year in Asbury Park, but it also was a big year for you. You turned 18.
Yes.
Signed up for the draft.
Yes.
Were called up. Things were moving along very, very quickly at that point in your life.
I was 17 when I graduated, and a week later was my 18th birthday.
Mhm.
And then I had to, by law, you had to register. If you were 18, you had to register. And Asbury Park was very quiet. There weren't many men around.
Yeah.
They were well run. And Asbury Park had a very quiet tone about it during those years. So yes, I was drafted, and they gave me a choice: Army, Navy, Marines.
Mhm.
I said, I'm Navy.
Did you get your canoe experience?
Yeah. That's right.
Where did you go to boot camp?
I went to Newport, Rhode Island for boot camp, and that was a 6-week period. And at the end of the 6-week period, they brought in a show. Entertainers would come in and entertain servicemen. That was quite a frequent practice at that time. And at this time, they brought the Andrews sisters.
The Andrews sisters.
Andrews sisters.
Yeah.
You remember them, perhaps?
I do.
Yeah, you're old.
Well, I remember hearing about them and seeing them many times on TV.
Yeah. Okay, so we're in this huge assembly area, 400 booths there. And the officer comes out on the stage and says, anyone here ever work in a theater? And I put up my hand.
I'll bet you did.
And he says, front and center. So I have to go up front.
Was there a problem? Was it a problem, or they just needed an extra hand on deck, so to speak?
I think they just needed an extra hand. So he took me backstage, and he introduced me to the Andrews sisters.
Well, that's great.
Yeah, and they needed somebody to handle the spotlight.
Right.
And that's why they wanted somebody who worked at a theater who might know something about a spotlight, which I do know very well. So, and that was made known to the Andrews sisters that I had handled the spotlight.
You were making them look good.
Yeah.
Yeah. Put them in the spotlight.
Yeah. So she, the leader, I forget her name now, but she told me what she wanted me to do. And she said, use the floodlight when all three of us are singing. But when I step forward, then I want you to spot me. So I got all those instructions, and I did just that.
Oh,
so
that's perfect.
that was it.
That was like the highlight of your training in boot camp. Huh?
That's right. So then boot camp is almost over. We had to take aptitude tests, and then they sent us home for a week leave. And when you reported back, then you found out where you were going to go.
Yeah.
And they sent me to an accounting school in Boston, downtown Boston, and we were billeted in a hotel 6 blocks away. And this course was 16 weeks. Yeah. It was an accounting course for the Navy accounting course. And every morning, there were 60 of us in the class. And every morning we would assemble outside the hotel. And then 60 of us, there was 6 abreast. And we marched from the hotel to the school. I did that every morning. And as we marched in cadence. And we would repeat left, 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 right, left. You had to go home and you left.
Oh, yeah.
And we would chant this as we marched right through the town, the city. And the police would stop all traffic.
For the parade.
Yeah. 60 maybe,
60 accountants.
and very in marching style. We went right through the streets, and the young women would stop and watch us,
That's
and
great.
cheer us on. Well, that went on for 16 weeks. And,
16 weeks. So things weren't too rough yet.
No.
No.
And then they sent me to dispersing school. And that was in Cambridge, in Harvard University, to use those facilities. And that was another 6 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
And I was promoted to a petty officer at that time on completion of that. So I'm a third class petty officer.
Were you aware at that time that they weren't going to put you in an office doing accounting, or
I didn't know what they were going to do.
you didn't know at that point?
No.
Mm-hmm.
Could be shore duty, could be ship duty, sure.
Mm-hmm.
So we completed at Cambridge, Massachusetts, and then I stayed in a private home while I was there. That was all arranged by the Navy because they didn't have any facilities at Harvard University to house people like myself. So they arranged for me to stay at a private home, and I stayed there for 6 weeks. And then I was transferred to Virginia, Newport, Virginia, and that is the amphibious training base.
Finally got to see a ship,
Oh, yes,
get on a ship.
yes.
Mm-hmm. And the
Yeah.
training consisted of what? What skills were you using there?
All guns,
Mm-hmm.
small arms,
Mm-hmm.
20 millimeters, 40 millimeters, 5-inch, all the training required.
Mm-hmm.
And as I said, that was 16 weeks of training.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing that they taught you was you must learn to kill. This is where they going to give you the mindset of what you're going to have to do.
Yeah.
And it's kill or be killed.
Mm-hmm.
And
So give it all you've got.
yep.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a very busy Navy base, and at the amphibious training center, very busy. A lot of trucks running around and all that, all these streets, little town almost. And about every hour, they would announce over the PA system throughout the city, march on the left side of the road, save yourself for the beachhead.
Oh, no.
Yeah. Okay, so then I was.
Were you assigned then to what ultimately was your vessel?
Yes, after that training, I was sent down to Charleston, South Carolina, Charleston, and they were still building the ship. Wasn't ready yet, but I was amazed at the Navy Yard down there.
Mm-hmm.
It operated 24 hours a day. At nighttime, it was all lit up. It looked like daylight.
Mm-hmm.
And most of the workers were women.
Interesting. Yeah, women.
They were doing a lot of men.
Rosie the Riveter kind of people.
Yes, they're welding and cutting metal, assembling ships.
Amazing, huh?
Yeah, so we had to wait about 2 weeks before our ship was ready. And finally we did. But during the training, they at amphibious training, they arranged to send us out on a voyage to get acquainted with the ship. And we boarded the ship in the morning, and we had breakfast on the ship, and they had canned figs for breakfast.
You're making a face.
Oh, I loved it. I loved those.
You loved it.
And I ate a lot of canned figs. So then I went up above deck, and now the ship that we're on is finally out in the ocean is rough. And we started arriving. And I went for the rail.
You lost
And I
it?
lost my breakfast.
Yeah.
But I wasn't alone.
Yeah, right. So this was a lot of guys' first time
Oh,
out.
yeah.
Yeah,
First time.
yeah.
You get over that pretty quick.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, on the Sino ship. The Navy built 12 of these ships. They were called LSMR. And I was on number 192. Now these ships are small, they're 200 feet long, and they have a draft of 6 feet, which enables them to operate very closely to the shore.
Now that stands for landing ship medium rocket,
That's correct.
medium range rocket, right?
Yes,
So you could get in very close to shore.
that's the objective. Yeah.
That was the objective,
Yeah. Well, there's 450 rocket launches on the deck.
Wow.
Yeah, and of course we had a 5-inch gun. We had 3 20 millimeters, 2 40 millimeters. It was what they called I forget their name now. Anyway, we boarded this ship, and there were 12 ships made this way, and we left in October.
Of what was the year then?
This is 1944,
44.
and we proceeded to the Panama Canal. And when we got to Panama City on the other side, we got a few hours liberty. Went ashore, saw bananas growing upside down.
Yeah.
New to me. And I had bought some Coke and a sandwich. And the girl that waited on me, I found out she was from Brooklyn, so way down Panama.
I know, you never know. This big,
Yeah.
small world, huh?
Right.
You went through San Diego?
Yes. When we left the canal, we went right to San Diego. That's a long trip, believe it or not. If you look at a map, you'll see it. It is a long trip. And we had to stop at San Diego for stores.
Mm-hmm.
And then from there, we went to Hawaii.
Mm-hmm.
And at one point, that's about 12 days to get to Hawaii on this ship that's very slow. Ship, it's like 15 knots.
Wow.
That's like 60 miles an hour.
Yeah.
So it takes a long time. And
Did you meet anyone in Hawaii?
I'm going to tell you I did. That's where I met Bill Kaus.
That's where you met Bill Kaus.
My good friend.
Just happenstance, huh?
Well, I knew he joined the Navy, but I hadn't seen him now for a couple of years.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. So that occurred when we were at anchor in Pearl Harbor, waiting to assemble a group of ships that would all move together. And one day, the signalman on my ship, signalman with the flags, yelled down to me. I'm on the deck. And he said, "Hey, Landis." He says, "There's a guy over here. Says his name is Bill Kaus, and he knows you." So I was quite surprised.
What a wonderful surprise.
And I talked to the captain, asked him if I could go over, and he said, "Okay, we're going to be here for about another 4 hours, so you can go for a little while. Take the small launch." I did. I went over to his ship, which was an LCT. It's smaller than my ship. And we had a good 4-hour meeting there.
Must have been a sight for sore eyes, especially now that you had more of a realization about where you were going and what was happening. You were heading west.
Yes.
Yes. You had a few more stops at islands before you got to the destination, which was Okinawa.
Yes.
Tell us just a little bit about the islands where you stopped.
Well, the first island was Johnston Island, and that's a large naval base there. It's a spit of land, not a tree on it, just a building. And that's where you got your stores. They had a dock. So you had to put your order in, and then you lay at anchor, waiting for them to give you the signal to come in and pick up your stores. So became a little boring for me. And I happened to glance at the life raft. It's mounted on the conning tower. And there's a fishing kit there, survivor's kit. I thought, I'm going to fish. So I took the kit. No rod, it's just a hand reel. So I got some bait downstairs in the galley. I got some meat. I used that for bait. And I threw it over the side. And the line kept going. I said to the navigator, how deep is it here? And he says, looks at the back. He comes back and says, 45 feet. Okay. So I let the line all the way down. And I got a hit right away. So I reeled it in. And so I came up on the deck. It was an octopus, about 4 feet in diameter. And I unhooked it and put it on dropped it on the deck. That deck was hot in the sun. And that octopus went right across the deck the other side and went down.
He got away, and you didn't try to catch him.
No.
No. Nobody wanted an
But
octopus.
everybody got
A big kick out of it.
big kick out of it.
Yeah.
They were all sitting around waiting, doing nothing. And then soon this octopus comes. And it was funny. I caught about 3 more. Yeah. And then we
That's what it
proceeded.
was there.
Then we proceeded to the next island, which was Majuro Atoll. And that island was taken from the Japanese, but there was only a small garrison of Japanese on it, so there wasn't much fighting. So it's a beautiful island, and trees and everything. When we went ashore, there was a fence built right across the island. The Navy stands on this, stays on this side, natives are on the other side. Well, to my astonishment, when we walk to the fence and the natives are there, and all the women are nude from their waist up. They're all bare-breasted.
They were natives. Native
women.
Yeah.
Couldn't believe it.
Couldn't believe. I
No.
betcha.
No.
And you were
We were
about 18
stunned.
years old. Yeah.
And we trade with them through the fence.
Mm-hmm.
And we gave them a candy bar. They gave me shiny shells that had been polished. And
Uh-huh.
that was the trade. So,
That was a bit of culture shock
yes,
right there.
absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah. And the next up was the Philippines, where you had your first rocket launch, huh? That was the
Yes.
first. So was that in combat, or is it a practice shot?
No, that was a combat. The Philippines are many, many islands.
Mm-hmm.
And there was one Jap garrison on this one isolated island. They wanted to clean it out because the U.S. the Navy wanted to use that island as a base. So, yes, that was our first launch of rockets, the first rocket launch.
And it wasn't too long after that you were in Okinawa, the bay.
Yes, at the Philippines, this Armada, that's where it was set up, 1,400 ships. It's known to be the largest invasion force in history, because now we're getting close to Japan.
Very.
Yeah, so Iwo Jima was February, and that has the icon of the people on top of the soldiers, Marines on top of the hill with a flag.
Yes.
Yeah, that's an icon. And that was a tough, we didn't participate in that, but that was going on in February. And they lost 7,000 Marines there, all young men. What a price to pay.
What a terrible price to pay. But your group suffered terribly too. An 82-day siege of 1,400 American ships.
Yes. We arrived at the Okinawa area, and the invasion was scheduled for April 1, which was Easter Sunday that year, 1945.
45.
1945. And that's where we took, oh, thank you. Yeah, that's the ship.
Yeah, this is the ship, which is the landing ship, medium rocket range,
Right,
192.
192. Yeah.
LSMR
Yeah.
192. So there was the flotilla of 12 of those and many other ships, because this was a major battle in the water, in the war. Bloody, you said, and kamikaze attacks, planes flying all over around you.
Yeah, as soon as we got there, one of our ships was attacked by a kamikaze. Damaged it so badly they couldn't use the ship anymore.
Mm-hmm.
So now we're down to 11 ships,
Mm-hmm.
and we're just getting started.
Mm-hmm.
And finally comes the April 1st invasion. And as you said, it was an 82-day battle that just went on and on and on.
Mm-hmm.
And the ferocity of it is what astounded me. Constant. You prayed for a rainy day.
Yeah.
Because then the
Planes couldn't fly?
The Navy couldn't, I mean, the Japanese Air Force couldn't find you then.
Yeah.
But after our initial runs, sending rockets to the beach, so in between the times, and there were many invasions on Okinawa first here and then there.
There was a landing force, and you were, yeah.
And when we weren't actually shelling the rockets, we were on picket duty. Now, picket duty was cruising back and forth from Okinawa area to Japan area. And the purpose is when you can see an enemy aircraft arriving, then you can radio back to let your commander on the island know that they're on their way. Now, there were 12 sectors where we would patrol back and forth. And I saw destroyers destroyed, sunk, and had to stay alert all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes you slept at the gun, and the cooks would bring the food around. So it was a very tough time.
It must have been an awful time, and especially as your ship was hit, but the bomb didn't go off. What were the chances?
Okay, yeah. It was just an ordinary other attack by a kamikaze. We didn't know the word kamikaze. We called them suicide.
Mm-hmm.
And
That word came later.
yeah, it came.
Yeah.
Yeah. We learned it after the war.
Yeah.
But this particular plane sighted us, targeted us, and he was coming at us, and we were hitting him with that 20 millimeter. And I saw the canopy on his plane. We blew it off, and I'm sure we killed him. But the plane kept coming, couldn't stop it.
Yeah.
And it hit the deck in the stern. And yes, he had a bomb slung underneath the plane, but it didn't detonate.
Did you think that was it as you saw the plane coming? Did you think your number was up?
Oh, that, yeah. Oh,
Pretty much.
Oh, yeah, pretty much. So.
Yeah.
So now, during this period of this invasion, 3 of our rocket ships were hit, in addition to us, and 3 of them were sunk. So our 12 ship force is now reduced to 8.
This picture is particularly interesting.
Okay.
This is from a newspaper article, I guess. It says, best Navy photos of the year, and it's showing a ship very much like yours.
Yes.
And
Well, our ship is in that photo there somewhere.
it's in there somewhere. Yeah, because they just show this rain of fire coming at you, and
Yes.
and going out from your ship also.
Yes.
Bob, your ship had to go back for repairs, but that was,
Yes.
I mean, so you were extremely lucky
Yes.
that you were headed back
Yeah.
to Hawaii for
Yes.
repairs.
Yes.
They were going to repair you and send you right back.
Oh, yeah, to
Yeah.
the main invasion.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But lucky for you, VJ Day was declared while you were in port?
Yeah. I want to go back, though, to
Go ahead.
on our return, going back to Pearl Harbor for repairs.
Yeah.
To prepare for the big invasion, November 1 of Japan. Well, we had gathered at Ulithi Atoll, which is off near the Philippines. And ships would assemble there, and then we would travel in a group all the way back to Hawaii. And while we were waiting to complete the course, all the ships to get together, while we're waiting, again, the signalman yells down to me, "Hey, Landis, there's a guy over there on that LCT, says his name's Bill Couse. Wants to see you."
Unbelievable.
Bill Couse.
That is great. It's like an omen of good things, maybe, you know? Yeah.
So then we return, and of course we're going to pass the international date line. See, when you go out, you lose a day. Now, when you come back and you're heading east, you're going to gain a day. And my birthday is July 3rd. We passed the line on July 4th, so I thought, well, I could have two birthdays.
You could have two birthdays. How many people has that ever happened to? How many people? Yeah, very, very unusual.
And now we're back in Hawaii.
Yeah, back in Hawaii. Had the A-bomb been dropped while you were
Yes.
being in repair?
We were in repair during the month of August, and the first bomb was dropped in August 8, I think, and then the second one was August 14th. And then the Japanese surrendered, and then that's where you saw me walking down the street with my friend.
In Honolulu?
In Honolulu on King Street, yes. You want to show that picture?
We will have that in there. That it's kind of nice, the old cars and such like that.
Yes.
So the war in Europe had already been won, and so this news pretty much brought the end of the war. But you met somebody else in Hawaii.
Yes. We were at a dock in Pearl Harbor, and I went ashore for business. I had some business to take care of. It was my responsibility, to maintain inventories, and I always had to order everything that we needed.
So all that storekeeper training came in,
You're responsible for the food, spare parts, and munitions. So you're responsible for the inventory. I was, and I would place orders when I had to. And I was also the dispersing officer. I paid boys.
They must have liked you.
That's
the food and the money.
Yep.
Yeah.
And then one day I went ashore for business, and I'm coming back to the ship, and the guard up on the top of the gangplank said, "Hey, Landis, your brother's here." Well, I was so surprised. Now, he was in the Air Force, as I stated, and he was on his way to Wake Island, and so he had a stopover in Hawaii. Wow. He knew my ship number because through correspondence with my mother, and he called the center of activities at Pearl Harbor Navy Base.
I was able to find out where you were.
And found out that my ship was in Pearl Harbor. So he came over, and that's what he visited me. So.
You didn't get to be discharged just because the war was over. The married men with children went first, and then married men, and then singles, right?
Yep.
Yeah. So just moving along, I'm just want to say that you were on the USS New Jersey after.
After they decommissioned my ship.
Yeah.
I was transferred to the USS New Jersey. And I worked there as a dispersing agent for the crew, and that went on for 4 months until I was eligible for discharge. And during that time, the USS New Jersey cruised through the Aleutian Islands, because it was known that there was still a Japanese garrison on one of the islands, even though the war has been declared over. This Japanese general would not surrender, so we just made a pass by to see, yeah, they're still there. And that was the end of that cruise. And then we came back, and then I was discharged and took a train to Long Island, New York. And there they had a big dance for us. And then the next day I went home.
Oh, it must have been quite a homecoming.
Yes.
Were you eligible for the GI plan for going to college then?
Yes.
Yeah, that was in effect already.
Yes.
Okay, so you went to the University of Maryland.
Yes, one semester.
One semester.
Yeah. The situation at home wasn't good, so I had to go home. And while I was in the Navy, you were allowed to send money home, and they arranged all that. So I always sent 80% of my money. Went back to my mother. So all the time I was in the service, she got that support.
That was great.
Yeah.
Yeah. And your brother was probably sending some home too.
Yes,
Yeah.
he did
So
the same thing.
yeah.
So I came back, left Maryland, I came back here, got a job.
You got a job at EAI, Electronics Associates, and they were in Long Branch. They also had a little post there in Monmouth Beach.
That's right.
Yeah.
North Long Branch.
North Long Branch, right. And you were there for 20 years. What was your job?
Yes. Well, I started as a draftsman, and then I became a design draftsman as I learned, got the experience, and then I became the manager of what they called engineering services, which included the drafting department and model shop, pre-assembly shop, and reproduction shop where they reproduce drawings.
So again, you're a manager.
Now I became a manager.
Yes.
And in 1970, after 20 years at EAI, I was bumped out because they brought in new management, and they brought their own managers, and EAI was a force. They grew so quickly.
Yeah.
And I think the president felt that he needed some professional manager, so they brought in.
Well, you also went with ECI, which was kind of an offshoot of that, and had the same kind of job.
Yes.
A manager in engineering services.
Yes. Well, I was operations manager at ECI for 24 years. And during that time, we opened a facility in Ireland, manufacturing facility in Ireland. And that was my job to set that up, which I did. At that time, Ireland had a 24% unemployment rate. And IDA, Industrial Development Authority, they sent a couple of their agents over to New York City, and they were talking to various businesses to try to encourage them to come over to Ireland and set up a plant. And so that's when we learned of it. And
another nice assignment for you then, huh? Yeah.
So I went over, and they gave me a tour of the other companies working there, and also of available factories over there, new buildings they were preparing. And the enticement was no taxes for 10 years and 50% grants on your equipment that you have to buy. So my the president of ECI said, good deal, we'll do it. And it was very successful. And when I left, when I retired, Ireland was doing very well in my business.
Oh yeah, Ireland came back. Well, that was 1999 when you retired, yes?
Yes.
Yeah. All work and no play will make Jack a dull boy, and we have to bring in now your personal life, where you met your wife,
Yes.
Lois, This is a picture of you.
I met my wife in a chorus line.
I hear that.
Yes.
I'm listening.
And actually, it was a amateur production by the Women's Club of Asbury Park. They were putting on a show at the Asbury Park High School. And she needed, she had 6 girls for a chorus line, and she needed 6 guys.
Mhm.
Now, I knew her very well because I knew her daughter, and I saw them frequently. So she begged me. And she had to beg me.
Please do the show. Yeah, we need you.
But she managed to get 6 guys, and we were in the show together. So.
That's terrific.
And that's where I met my wife. She was my partner on the chorus line.
That's fantastic.
So that's where I met Lois, and a year later, we were married in 1950, June 1950. And we lived at Santander Apartments in Asbury Park for a while.
Oh, that's a nice, beautiful building.
Yeah, and then we had our first child in 1951.
You have 5 children altogether. Tell us
Yes.
their
Yes.
names.
Well, the first one was a girl, and I bought a new house in Neptune Gardens. Small little community, all young couples just like myself. First house, small, and we stayed there for about 8 years in that house, and by this time we had 3 children. So we needed a bigger house, and I bought one over in Sharp River Hills, in Neptune, and we lived there for about 3 years. And we needed a 3-bedroom house. So Lois went shopping, and she found this house in Ocean Township called Chatelawn Manor, and
you're still there today?
I'm still there today.
Uh-huh.
So we became residents of Ocean Township on August of 1962. So we've been there for 53 years now in Chatelawn. So
tell me again the names of your children.
the oldest one is Michelle, and then we have Robin, and then Bob Jr.
Bob Jr.
Robert, yeah, and then Paul, and then Jody. Now all are married except Paul, and we have 10 grandchildren now, and we have 6 great-grandchildren.
That's wonderful. This is wonderful.
Yeah.
And just to bring us up to date on, as we close, what you're doing now.
Yes,
Yeah.
I volunteer for the museum, this museum here, and I started doing that, I think, about 1990. I was the treasurer for 10 years, and then I gave that up to Jack, then I became property manager here. That's what I do now.
Manager again, one more time, huh? So from the high school theater manager to the career management positions to the museum property manager.
Yeah.
You've managed to manage very well.
What?
You've managed to manage very well. Bob, thank you so much for sharing all these stories with us, and thank you for your service.
Okay, thank you.
And the role you played in the history of our country as well as the history of the museum.
Yes.
Okay, well, it's been a pleasure talking to you.
Yeah.
And Ocean Township. Yeah, that's it.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, you betcha. We thank you. We hope you enjoyed this edition of Hometown History. And if you have a story that you'd like to tell, please contact the museum at 732-531-2136. And see you next time. Thanks for watching.